Okay guys, today I think I'm going to review Ubuntu 17.10. Now this is still beta. The release date for Ubuntu 17.10 is still 10 days away. It's supposed to be released October 19th, and today is October the 9th as I'm recording this video. But it is close enough to the release date that pretty much whatever we install today, this is going to be pretty much Ubuntu 17.10. So again, this is actually the second beta release. Actually, it's actually one of the daily snapshots, I think, is what I pulled down. But again, it's close enough that pretty much whatever we see today, they're not making any changes in the next 10 days. So I'm going to install Ubuntu 17.10 inside a virtual machine, inside VirtualBox in this case. So let's boot up. Now it may take a minute for the installer to load up, for this ISO file to finally boot up. The ISO I downloaded was 1.4 gigabytes in size, so it's a little bigger than some of the ISOs in past versions of Ubuntu. I remember for a long time Ubuntu had this requirement that they wouldn't go over 700 megabytes because they wanted it to be able to fit on a CD. They finally did away with that, and now their ISO sizes typically hover around 1 gig, maybe a little more. Alright, so we're at the installer. This is your standard Ubuntu installer. Pretty straightforward. I think most of you have probably installed Ubuntu on a machine before, but I'm going to run through it because the install process for Ubuntu is so quick and simple. And for new users, if you happen to have never installed Ubuntu, I think it's worth me just going ahead and running through this real quick. So you have the option Try Ubuntu, which will boot directly into a live environment for you to test out without installing, or you can click the install button here to go directly to the installation process, and that is what I'm going to do. Alright, do we want to download updates while installing? You know what? No, I'm not going to choose that because it's going to take a little more time for this video, and I don't want to sit here and wait on downloading updates. Install third-party software and graphics. Now I'm going to go ahead and choose that because it's just going to make our life a little dimmer if I don't have some of that third-party software and graphics drivers and codecs and stuff. So I will choose that. The download updates, I'll do that myself, probably off camera after I finish this video. I don't want to waste time and do that on this video. So continue. We wait for the next slide here to appear in the installer, and it's basically asking me where we want to install this, what we want to do with the disk. I'm installing this in a virtual machine, and I'm just going to give it the entire hard drive on this virtual machine. So I'm going to choose Erase Disk and install Ubuntu, which is already chosen by default. Now you may want to choose something else, especially if you plan on dual booting alongside another operating system such as Windows. Then you would have to choose something else, and then you would have to set up partitions. You have to set up a partition for Windows and set up a partition for Ubuntu. Again, I don't have to do any of that for this installation, so I'm just going to give it the entire disk, and it wants to confirm that I want to give it the entire disk and set up an extended 4 partition on SDA. Yeah, that's fine. And now it's asking about time zones. It's chosen Chicago, which is in the central time zone here in the US. I am in the central time zone, so good job on picking that up, Ubuntu. You'd be surprised how most distributions do not pick the correct time zone I'm in. English US for the keyboard layout. It's already correct, so I don't need to change anything, but to test it out, I can type something here. just to make sure that what I actually am typing on the keyboard is the correct characters here. If it's not, then you may have to adjust these settings, but in my case it was correct. Now we need to pick our username. For this video I'm just going to choose Ubuntu as my username, and then I'm going to give it a very simple password. And it's warning me that this password is weak, but I'm going to choose it anyway. And luckily Ubuntu doesn't give you too much hassle about these weak passwords. I know some Linux distros will really bug the crap out of you if you choose a very weak password. They want a couple of confirmations from you. Do you really want to choose 1234 as your password? Yes, that's why I typed it, so please let me go on with my life. And now I'm going to pause the video because there's nothing else for me to enter here. It is just going to go through the installation process. It's probably going to take maybe 10 minutes, so I'll see you in a couple minutes. Okay, and the installer has finished running, so it is finished installing. Now we have to reboot. You always have to restart the machine after the installation is completed. So alright, the installation has completed, and then it asks to reboot the machine. So the install process for Ubuntu is dead simple, very easy, very fast. So, and now we have booted up. We are at the login manager, which we're going to see some major changes here in this version of Ubuntu. 17.10 no longer comes with the Unity desktop. It also no longer comes with the Light DM login manager. This is the Genome login manager. So a little bit of a different look, but the login managers, one login manager is the same as the other. You type in a password, so not a big deal there. But let's see how our Genome desktop environment compares to Unity. Now I typically use minimal desktop environments in window managers. For a floating window manager I usually stick to OpenBox. I'm more of a minimalist kind of guy, and I run a lot of tiling window managers like Xmonad. So I don't usually run full desktop environments like Genome, KDE, Unity, but I do have Unity on one of my laptops, and I actually quite like it. It makes a lot of sense on a smaller laptop screen. I find Unity to be really nice. So let's see how I like Ubuntu's implementation here of GNOME. Now one thing I notice that they have done with the GNOME desktop is they put the little sidebar here, much like the Unity launcher almost mimics it in some ways, except instead of having a launcher button here at the top, looks like they've moved it to the bottom for some reason. So let me click that and see if we can. Okay, the animations are a little slow. That's kind of to be expected. We are inside a virtual machine. The GNOME desktop environment is kind of it takes a little bit of power, CPU power, and graphics card power to run. So running this in VirtualBox, not going to be the best performance. And Ubuntu is already asking me to update the software. You know what, to get the most out of this and to fix some of the graphical hiccups and the general slowness here, I'm going to update the system. I'm going to go ahead and pause the video and update the system just so we get, the best version of Ubuntu possible for this video. So I'll be back in a few minutes. Okay guys, so I've updated the system here. It just needed to update a few things. It wasn't a very big update. I think it had about 60 programs it wanted to update. I also went ahead and took the time to get the VirtualBox guest editions installed here, which make Ubuntu and the GNOME desktop environment here run a little bit better inside VirtualBox. So should run a little smoother than without, for sure, much better than without the guest editions. It's going to run like a complete dog without these guest editions installed. But you guys don't need to worry about that unless you're running it inside VirtualBox. This is a VirtualBox only kind of thing. Alright, so back to Ubuntu 17.10, our first look at it. Again, 10 days early, but this is basically it. This is what you're going to get. We have the launcher here on the side that basically mimics Unity. Show applications here at the bottom, which shows frequent applications, and then it has a slider here to show all applications. Okay, and the animations are still a little sluggish, but not too bad. By default, it looks like we have a few games like I'll Write, Solitaire, Mine, Sudoku. We have our calculator, calendar. We have Cheese, which is a webcam application. We have the file manager, Nautilus, which now is just called Files. GNOME is renaming all of their software basically to make simpler names. Instead of Nautilus File Manager, you have Files. Firefox is our web browser. We have the LibreOffice suite installed. We have Calc, Draw, Impress, Math, and Writer. We have Rhythmbox as our media player, Shotwell Photo Manager, Simple Scan for scanning, and let's see, Sudoku, more games. We have our terminal, which is the GNOME terminal, obviously. We have gedit, which is the text editor, the default text editor in the GNOME desktop environment. Thunderbird Mail is also included by default, which honestly they could probably leave Thunderbird out these days because most email users probably use webmail. Oh, I'm certain most email users use webmail now, so they could probably do without taking up space on the disk with Thunderbird. I mean, there's other programs they leave out that I would like included that are, much more useful than Thunderbird, but they installed it, not a big deal. If you want to uninstall it, it's an easy uninstall process. They also include Transmission, Bittorrent client. That's another one. I mean, does anybody really use BitTorrents? I mean, it's pretty rare I ever torrent anything, and I'm kind of a bit of a nerd. I think your average Ubuntu user has no idea how to use BitTorrents, but they install it. And it's part of the GNOME desktop environment anyway. It's part of the GNOME suite of programs. We have our Ubuntu Software Center, which I don't believe is the Ubuntu Software Center really anymore. I think it's GNOME Software now as the actual program, but Ubuntu still names it the Ubuntu Software Center just for consistency. We have this little utility group here, which if I clicked on it would open up a submenu of utilities. Our archive manager, character map, disk usage, image viewer, system monitor, etc. And we have the Totem video player, is GNOME's video player, but they've renamed it from Totem. Now they just call it Videos. Again, they're renaming all their stuff, I guess just simplifying the names. Not sure why they're bothering with that. It's kind of pointless, but hey, whatever they want to do. And let's get out of the application menu. One thing I want to discuss is it seems that Ubuntu still includes this Amazon launcher here on the sidebar, which they did in Unity too. And people really criticized them for it, gave them a lot of hell about Amazon being here, which I don't mind them trying to make a little money, because if you click on it, all it does is it's going to open up Firefox, and it's going to go to the Amazon page, and it's going to include an affiliate link, and basically Ubuntu makes a little money, a few pennies or whatever if you order something from Amazon using their affiliate link, which I'm okay with. But how many people are really going to click that button to do their Amazon shopping? it's really wishful thinking on Ubuntu's part to think they're going to get very many people that use that anyway. And again, it's pennies that they're going to be making, not much money at all. And all they're really doing is just ticking people off by having that there. But if you want to remove it, it's simple to remove. Right click, remove from favorites, and it's gone. So something that's easy to get rid of. I'm going to open up a few of these programs. So I'm going to open up the file manager. What used to be Nautilus File Manager now is just files. I'll open up Rhythmbox, the Rhythmbox media player, which is actually a really nice audio player. I really like Rhythmbox. I'm going to hit Control-Alt-T, which is the shortcut in Ubuntu to open up a terminal. And then I'm going to click the Activities tab in the top left, just to show you how the Activities tab works. If I move my mouse over here to the right side of the screen, we have our virtual desktops here. I can move to the second desktop here, or go back to the first one. I can move windows between them. And now I have these two still on the first virtual desktop. I have Rhythmbox on the second virtual desktop, and because I have something on both of these desktops, it automatically created a third virtual desktop. I'm going to put everything back on the first desktop because I really don't feel like switching between desktops, but just wanted to show you how that worked, especially for people coming from Unity. The Genome desktop environment works a little different. Not, a big difference. I mean, you're not going to feel out of place in Genome if you're coming from Unity, especially the way Ubuntu has laid everything out here. Having that sidebar on the left, I think that provides a little familiarity to longtime Unity users. The one thing that I think Unity users will miss that I don't think is possible in Genome, at least not in the way Ubuntu implemented it, is the global menu. Remember, in Unity you had a global menu where when you had an application maximized, the window buttons that are here on the right were actually in the top bar here and all the way to the left, saving on space. You didn't have this bar here at the top of the window at all. The top bar here, I mean, it was brilliant. It saved on space. It looked clean. I love that global menu. I wish Genome had it. Speaking of the window buttons on the right here, we need to discuss some of the big changes here in Ubuntu 17.10. Since they switched to Genome, the window buttons are now on the right side of your windows rather than the left. Now in Unity, it made sense for them to be on the left because everything in Unity takes place on the left part of the screen. The launcher is on the left. The button, the launcher button at the top left corner. When you have a window maximized, your buttons are in the top left corner. Everything's on the left side of the screen. You never had to go to the right side of the screen with your mouse. There was very little mouse travel in Unity. Everything was just in one spot. Genome operates a little differently, and so they put the buttons back on the right side in 17.10, which is good. A lot of users complained about it, especially longtime Windows users. They've gotten used to buttons on the right side of their windows, so I don't think that's a big deal. I think that's fine that they moved them to the right side. And it's an easy switch. I think you can still put them on the left side of the windows if you prefer that way. Other big changes in 17.10, they are using Wayland by default rather than X11. So they're using the Wayland display server. Ubuntu is also using Systemd rather than Upstart. Now they've made that change a while back, but for those of you that are still running older versions of Ubuntu that are running Upstart, Ubuntu now is using systemd. Let's see what other changes have been made. So I'm pulling up this OMG Ubuntu article. This was discussing the Beta 2 release from a few days ago, basically what we're reviewing here. And they go over some of the major changes coming to this new version of Ubuntu. I mentioned the loss of the global menu. You also no longer have the HUD, the heads-up display, that in Unity you hit Alt F2 and you had this little drop-down command prompt that you could run commands from, and it also lets you search through application menus, and it was actually a really brilliant concept that is dead now that Unity is no more. There is no HUD feature in any other desktop environment that I know of. Nothing that mimics what the HUD did, so that's unfortunate. We're running Genome 3.26. Obviously, we discussed LightDM. It's no longer installed as the login manager. It's the Genome login manager now. The Linux kernel is 4.13. 4.13 is the Linux kernel. And this is major news that I did not know, is that Ubuntu is dropping their 32-bit ISO. Ubuntu will no longer have a 32-bit desktop ISO. So 64-bit only, which is fine. I think, everybody's been running 64-bit computers for a decade or more now. Very few people need 32-bit support for a desktop, so I think that's a smart decision. You don't need to have a 32-bit version and a 64-bit version of Ubuntu. It's just wasted resources creating that 32-bit desktop ISO. So all in all, it's still Ubuntu. The install process, the same. Genome 3, this is the first Ubuntu, mainline Ubuntu, that is running Genome since Genome 2 5 years ago, 6 years ago, whenever the last time they had the Genome 2 desktop. But they've never had the Genome 3 desktop environment as their desktop environment on their flagship Ubuntu desktop version. But it mimics Unity well. I think Unity users will like it. I think this is going to pass the test. All in all, it's Ubuntu, people.